Let's talk about conferences for a minute. What are they for? What's the real purpose of a conference? A lot of people will say learning, professional development, but a lot of people also say things like being part of a community, networking, finding new collaborators, new thought leaders, and that's all great, but I want to think about the structure of conferences and how well the structure actually facilitates making those connections, networking, building meaningful relationships. Because I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Conferences say that they're a great place to meet people, to feel included, and to feel welcome, but for a lot of people, introverts, people who are neurodivergent, people who maybe English isn't their first language or whatever the official language that's being spoken at the conference isn't their first language, people who've never been before. It can be really hard to meet people, especially if a lot of people there already know each other. So I've thought a lot about how can we disrupt the current conference format to make them places that are more inclusive and more engaging and interactive, that do a better job of helping to make those connections and that don't leave people feeling excluded or that they're just listening in passive mode. They're not really interacting or engaging with people or with the information that's being presented, and make them a little bit more exciting. People don't necessarily have the attention spans to just sit and be talked at for hours and hours like we used to. And so I think there's really exciting things that we could do to make conferences more interesting and engaging. One of them is having more engaging speakers, making sure that the speakers have some kind of interaction built in to their keynotes, into their workshops, into their panels, whatever the format may be. And that's not just, I'm going to ask a question and take responses from the audience, or have you turn to the person next to you and talk about this for a little bit and share out. Those things are great, but they're sort of the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to interactivity. There's all sorts of activities that could be done, games, different ways of structuring conversations, different ways of making sure that people talk with multiple people, not just the person sitting right next to them. Because let's be honest, sometimes the person you're sitting right next to is not particularly a great contact for you. That doesn't mean they're a bad person or you're a bad person. Maybe you're just there for different things, or you come from really different industries that don't really have an opportunity to collaborate. So you want to try to meet as many people as possible. So making more engaging and interactive speakers is one thing. Another is to build in more opportunities for there to be structured networking. When I think of conference networking, I think of walking into a big room where there's a buffet on one side, maybe a bar on one side, some high top tables, maybe some larger tables, and people standing around. And I know for me, that is a huge source of anxiety. I have a really hard time just going up to strangers and making conversations, especially if people are already standing in groups and mid-conversation. So bringing structured networking can be things like having some sort of game that requires that people interact with each other. And having that type of shared experience automatically unlocks the gates to so many different things to talk about. You want to learn more about what they were thinking or what their strategy was or what their background is because of the way that they engaged in that game or activity. And then the conversations just take off naturally. And it's a really great way to meet connections, both as personal connections, maybe having a conference buddy, but also getting into meaningful professional connections. So bringing more structured ways of networking and connecting is another really great strategy for conferences. Another one is to think about how do you set up the space so it's a little bit more welcoming. Maybe having specific game sessions in there where the purpose of that session isn't necessarily just to listen and learn, but it is just to meet other people. A room that's set up with different board games on tables, or maybe there's a facilitator in there who's leading a few games and just making sure that those conversations go. But it's a structured, intentional time just for people who are interested in having this more playful type of engaging and networking, and have a space that's dedicated to that, where there's not a lot of other noise happening and other things happening in that same room. So think about what conferences you've been to and how they might have benefited from these types of ideas, and how much more powerful the experience and memorable the experience would be if you really met some great connections that could be friends, could be collaborators, could be lifelong partners for brainstorming or thought leadership. And if you're curious to hear about more of these ideas or how we can help make conferences more meaningful and interactive, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thanks.